Get down! Come on!
Welcome back, I'm Raiden from Blue Gaming, and this week on Raiden Reviews, I have the somewhat late review of Resident Evil 2. I actually set myself some goals before I did this review, and those were basically things like play every single mode, which was Leon playthrough A and B, Claire playthrough A and B, playing the Hunk Survivor mission and the Tofu Survivor mission. And then I also wanted to get S rank somewhere, which I ended up getting S rank on Leon playthrough A, my second time doing that because I actually knew what to do. So after completing those, which I just completed recently, I figured it was finally time to do a somewhat in-depth review of Resident Evil 2. I also felt like it was kind of a personal thing playing Resident Evil 2 because I actually have a cat named Leon, and it is named after the one and only Leon S. Kennedy. I got him around the time that I was playing Resident Evil 4 for like the third or fourth time and decided to name him after Leon. So let's get right into this review finally, starting as always with graphics. Nobody can deny that this game looks amazing. It is one of the most photorealistic games that I've ever played, and seriously, watching this on YouTube does not do it justice. This game is nearly perfect when it comes to visuals. Nearly perfect. It does falter in a few circumstances. Occasionally, when you pick up an item and look at it for the first time, it will have this low resolution texture for a second or two, and then the high resolution model will kick in. And speaking of low resolution, some of the walls look distinctly low res. Specifically those with things like notes or pictures on them. Some of those can look a little too low res for my liking, but it's not really anything that you're going to be looking into too deeply. Now, for some visual bugs, there aren't many of them, and pretty much all of them that I've found deal with the shine in the game, because the game likes to put shine on a lot of things. The two that I've seen are, well, the first one being the very repeatable one that many people have talked about. In the central hall of the police station, if you look at the walls in the right angle, you can actually see them flickering really badly, and I know a lot of people have talked about this, but it's just like a weird oversight with the way that the shine works on the walls. Because the whole wall doesn't flicker, it's just the parts that are supposed to be shining, they'll flicker on and off, and it gets really distracting if you stare at it for too long. The other one is one time down when I was in the sewers, I got out of one of the water sections, and the shine hit like the screen in the right angle so that it looked like a beam from the sun. That's how bright it was, and that was really annoying, but thankfully that has only happened once throughout all 6 of my playthroughs, so that's not a really repeatable bug. Besides that, I'm personally not a big fan of how the water looks on some of the clothing in the game. I just think it looks a bit obnoxious and really kind of distracting almost, because it just like coats the clothing in water instead of actually like soaking in as it should. Personally, though, I think that Resident Evil 2 is one of the best looking games in a while, and I think that it's going to be one of the better looking games for a long time to come because this game just looks so damn good. Next, let's move on to sound, music, and voice. Once again, the sound effects in this game are absolutely amazing. Everything from the sounds of the zombies to just walking around the world just sounds perfect. There is a few sounds, though, that stand out as being somewhat bad. The first one is the basic pistols that each of the characters have are quite underwhelming. I wish that they'd put a bit more emphasis on those because I've shot pistols that are similar to those that the characters have, and they definitely sound a lot beefier than what they do in this game. I also have to give a special shout out to the footsteps in this game, specifically the footstep sound effects, because not only are they always there, but they don't get annoying, and they actually add to the sort of loneliness of the situation because there isn't really many people around, and most of them are zombies. So having that nice sound effect there where it doesn't get annoying and it adds to the atmosphere, it's just perfect. Next, let's move on to music. This is the first game that I've reviewed that has 2 soundtracks instead of just one. The regular game comes with a remade soundtrack, which is mostly just orchestral stuff and a choir, except for one song, which I'll talk about in specific. But there's also a DLC which replaces all the music in the game with the original Resident Evil 2 music, which I won't really get into detail here, but I like that little retro throwback, and being able to use that Resident Evil 2 music from the original actually adds a bit of atmosphere that the new one just doesn't really have. I've stated multiple times in the past how much I really think that orchestras are overused in video game music when not used in any creative way. And once again, here, that's basically the case. The whole point of it is trying to get this brooding and atmospheric tone across, and really just doing that with a full-on orchestra is cliche at this point. Like, it can be done without having a full-on orchestra. Now, to get to that one very specific song that stands out, it is called Saudade, which is Portuguese for nostalgia, and it is a rock song made to sound like it came from the late 90s. And this is the standout piece of the entire soundtrack. It just sucks that so few people are actually going to be able to hear it because really it shows up in so few places. It's played in the beginning of Leon's playthrough on a car radio, and then it is played at the end of hardcore playthroughs. And not that many people are actually going to do or pay attention to either of those things, so sadly most people are missing out on the coolest song in the entire game. Personally, though, I just pay the $3 to switch out the entire soundtrack with the original one because, at least in today's day and age, having a soundtrack that retro is kind of a change of pace. Next, let's move on to voice, and to no one's surprise, this game has top-tier voice acting. The real surprising thing, though, is how few credits are actually behind the voice actors in this game. Most of them have this actually as their first named voice acting gig. In fact, for Nick Apostolides and Stephanie Panicello, these are actually their first named gigs, and they happen to be voice acting none other than Leon and Claire. And this is the first named voice acting gig that they have. Pretty incredible. Although there are some veterans in here, the voice of William Birkin, you might recognize it because it is TJ Rotolo, which you might know as Frank West from the Dead Rising games, and the voices of Hunk and Annette Birkin being Keith Silverstein and Karen Strassman, respectively. Those are both industry veterans that have many credits in anime. All around, though, I didn't hear any bad voice acting in my time playing the game, and like I said before, everything here is top-notch. So let's move on to story. And because so many people know the story of Resident Evil 2 already, even if they haven't played the games, and because I don't want to give away any spoilers, I'm just gonna summarize it really quickly. Basically, you play as either Leon S. Kennedy or Claire Redfield, who are making their way to the town of Raccoon City for their own respective reasons. They run into each other, they decide that they'll join each other to make it to the city, and it turns out that there's a zombie outbreak going on in the city. So now that they're there, they kind of have to find a way to leave. So for the majority of the game, for both characters, you are playing through their tumultuous exit from Raccoon City and through all the little things that they uncover about what's really going on in Raccoon City. Which leads us right into gameplay, which is quite different than what I thought it was going to be. Resident Evil 2 puts other recent survival horror games to shame because they all either get the horror right or they get the survival right. They usually don't get both, but this game actually gets both of those things right. Surprisingly, though, it's not the zombies that actually instill horror, it's the special zombies that you run into, or the special creatures, such as the Lickers, Mr. X, William Birkin, the different things that run around that aren't your typical zombie. The typical zombie does have a bit of body horror when you're first getting into it, but once you've seen some of the early cutscenes in the first like 30 minutes to an hour of the game, you really aren't shocked by pretty much anything else you see, but the constant following that Mr. X does, or just how quick the Lickers are, actually gave me a bit of a fright once or twice, and that's pretty rare in games. Also, the game never gives you enough ammo for your guns. You are always almost running out, and in some cases you are running out and you just have to make do with what you have. I do have to say though, as you play, this becomes less of a problem because you really start to understand what zombies you need to start shooting and which ones you can just outright avoid. And once you learn that kind of stuff, then you can start to get up to comfortable amounts of ammo. But until you get to that point, you are always near empty on every gun that you have. To end off this section, I'll talk about how the runs work, because a lot of people go into this expecting a lot less content than what they actually get, or they might think that there's less content in the game than what they actually get. So let's just break that down. When you first start playing, you choose between either Leon or Claire as who you'll play as. This will be your playthrough A as that character. So let's say you choose Leon. So you'll play through playthrough A as Leon, taking anywhere from about 2 to 5-ish hours for playthrough A as Leon. Once you finish that, you will then be able to do playthrough B. But playthrough B will be with the opposite character. So if you picked Leon in the beginning, then playthrough B will be Claire. So you play through playthrough B, which will be about 2 hours to about 4 hours, depending on how fast or slow you are. Playthrough B will always be shorter because they skip some of the early plot points just to get the things moving, and playthrough B is really only to show you the other person's perspective when you're playing through. So the playthrough A can actually affect playthrough B. Like depending on what weapons or items you pick up in playthrough A, they'll be different in playthrough B. And once you finish your first playthrough B, then you can actually go back and play a second playthrough A, but with the opposite character, and then a second playthrough B with the opposite character again. So in total, there's 4 different playthroughs. There's Claire A, Claire B, Leon A, and Leon B. All 4 of those are different in what you will be doing and what you can pick up and where things will be and whatnot like that. On top of that, there's also the survivor modes. There's currently 2, but they have announced they will be adding at least 3 more. There's 3 currently announced, but they could be adding more in the future. The 2 available at launch are the Hunk Survivor Mission and the Tofu Survivor Mission. You unlock the Hunk Survivor Mission by just playing through a playthrough A and playthrough B cycle, and then you unlock the Tofu Survivor Mission by playing through the runs at least 6 times. So that means that you could play a playthrough A, a playthrough B, and then play through Hunk maybe 4 times, and there you go, you get your 6 runs, and that is that. By the way, the Survivor runs with Hunk and Tofu only take about 10-15 minutes, depending on how fast you are. I've seen some people actually finish it in like 7, which is absolutely insane to me. Those guys are like speedrun gods. But yeah, so those are much shorter and they give you a much smaller kind of playthrough. It's really just going from point A to point B as fast as possible as a specific character, so far as either Hunk or Tofu. One final thing, because I completely forgot about it until this point, is that you can definitely tell that this game is a remake because it uses the old system of having certain doors that only open with certain keys. Like there's the blue key, the green key, the red key, and those only open blue, red, and green doors. And really, that's quite refreshing because we haven't seen something like that in a long time. And I just love the flow of this game and how it cycles you through this semi-open world, but I just love the flow of this game because of those old systems like the color-coded doors or being able to open something with a certain key that you pick up from a different place. So there's a lot of backtracking and stuff, but it all just ends up being really, really good. So let's move on to my final thoughts and let's give this game a score. Honestly, I knew I was going to like this game going into it. It was just a matter of how much I was going to like it, and it still surprised me. It was better than I expected it to be. I was a little disappointed by the lack of multiple survivor missions besides just the two that's already in the game, or something like a mercenaries mode would be kind of cool. But they are somewhat remedying that by adding in 3 new survivor modes that are all going to be free, and they're actually adding them in relatively soon. I just really hope that they keep adding more besides these 3 because while having 5 survivor missions in total is nice, having more is always nicer. So now let's move on to my score, and if you don't know how my scoring system works, I do not give games a traditional number score. I feel that that is ineffective. So my scoring system goes buy, wait for a sale, or never touch it. And this game is quite obviously a buy. Like, this game is probably going to be on my top 10 games of the year list because it's just that good. And well, remakes do make it on my list. It's re-releases or remasters that don't make it on my list. But overall, yeah, had an amazing time with this. I didn't spend as much time with it as I expected. Playthrough A took me about 3 to 4-ish hours each time. Especially to get that S rank, I had to get it in, I believe, under 3.5 hours. But I played through pretty much all the different modes, and I was still finished within about 16 or 17 hours, and the new survivor missions I think is only going to add like 2 or 3 more hours worth of content. So time-wise, there isn't a ton of content, but it's all really, really good. So I just absolutely love this game, and I recommend it to pretty much everybody, even the people that don't like horror games, because, well, once you get past the body horror in like the first 30 minutes of your first playthrough, there's pretty much no horror past that besides the occasional jump scare from a licker that you just didn't happen to see, or the footsteps of Mr. X that you can hear pretty much throughout the entirety of the Raccoon City Police Department. But besides that, very little horror, but enough to still call it survival horror. All in all, though, like I said, amazing. And I don't really have anything else to say after that. So, as always, I'm Raiden from Blue Gaming, and I'll see you guys in the next one.